We got more black folks in 2 housing projects than you all got in the entire Northwest. I mean, so when I talk about black folks, I'm talking about black folks, you know. And we don't hear that. Who are we? Why are we here, you know? So, I had them to get on the subway where all the blacks ride and pick up the newspapers and bring them back to class the exact way they picked them up on the air. The exact way they picked them up, bring them back to class. We're doing this research. Sure enough, every paper that they picked up on that subway, and I mean they picked them up, the papers then were about 10, 15 cents. Every paper they picked up was either turned to Ann Landers or turned to the astrology page. So right every day, if you notice, watch this. Whenever we get papers, that's how serious people, that's how they are Mentacide has programmed us. And Mentacide, as I told you, is defined, as the sister told you, is defined as the deliberate and systematic destruction of a group's mind, with the ultimate purpose being the extermination of that group. He who controls minds controls behinds. He who controls the brain controls behavior. Very simple. Nothing complex about that. So you have blacks, if you look on the paper, they'll turn straight past the front page, stop at Ann Landers, and then go to the astrology page, and then put the paper down. Put the paper down. And even men of you, I'm not serious here, carry on serious discussion about astrology. Now let's just deal with that Mentacide process. How can you deal with astrology when they admit that Julius Caesar decided to put a month in? You know, here they screwed it up so much that we got February, 28 days. And by the way, that's our month. They gave us the shortest month in the year. And I'm making a suggestion here tonight, and I hope you carry it on. Let us start having in January 1st, because I'm getting tired of traveling for 30 days every year. Let us start in January 1st, and very serious, having Black History Year and White History Month, White History Week. Seriously, let's stop Black History Month. Let's stop it all together. It's time to stop the nonsense of this. Why should we study Black history 1 month out of a year and we black folk? That's Mentacide. You don't hear Italian month, History Month. You don't hear Irish History Month, Jewish History Month. Number one, they ain't got no history. But anyway, you don't hear. Yes, they do. Let me stop here. Yes, they do have history. Yes, they do. It's bad, but they have it. Now, so when we look at suicide, for example, and show you about Mentacide, all the things they say that create and keep people, and we do have brothers and sisters committing suicides. I don't killing themselves, not committing suicide, killing themselves. There's a difference. I'm going to tell you about the difference, about the definition. All of the conditions that produce suicide in other people, that they say produce, that is the feelings of feeling helpless, the feelings of feeling hopelessness, the feeling of feeling powerless, all of those things which create problems for white community and create a situation where they commit suicide, for the black community was considered as part of our destiny. Believe it or not, for many years, until lately, blacks considered suffering as a way of life, not death. Suffering as a way of life, not death. You didn't kill yourself because you suffered. Hell, if we had that, most of us wouldn't be here. Think about it. How is it that in less than 20 years, the black community now has one of the highest suicide rates in the nation? I'll begin to explain that. And it was out of this cultural imperative, believe it or not, about suffering and how we dealt with suffering, that the blues developed and is now being stolen. And it revealed incomparable soul of black folks that the boy talked about. In fact, it should be noted that centuries before European scientists talked about existentialism, centuries before it, blacks had accepted, unfortunately, what I told you. The whole definition of existentialism is this: to live is to suffer. And the ultimate test is the meaning that people find in that suffering, which dictates the way they live and die. So here we had, as black people, all of these years, we lived an existentialist existence according to the white scientists. Now, so before the 1960s, it would have been very difficult for blacks in the United States, in any community, even Seattle, to understand black suicide. Before the 1960s, what happened? Given this historical reality, the question must be raised is how could the people who in the worst of times endure can now reflect one of the highest suicide rates in the United States? right away we began to get into some answers. And I'll tell you this. I label this paper lynching by any suicide, black suicide, lynching by any other name as being lynching. But when I talk about free will, which is part of that Mentacide, the concept of free will absolves whites of any responsibility for their victim's condition. In fact, whites have developed an envious effective defense mechanism called the guilt of the victim. It is so effective that we begin to accept our plight, and this is due to our religious upbringing, as being God's will. That is God's will that we suffer. It should be noted that when I talk about Mentacide, I'm talking about a worldwide phenomenon among black people. Everywhere you go, and you must ask yourself this as black people, there's some realities we must face. Why is it that everywhere you go and find whites and blacks in close proximity to each other, whites are on top? Whites are ruling. That question must be answered. Questions like that cannot be skated on. You can't tell me, oh, it just happens that way. It's just a function of history. Somewhere, if that was not an intent here, somewhere in the world you will find black folks oppressing whites. Somewhere in the world. Such is not the case. Not only where you find blacks, where you will find blacks in anybody else, the blacks on the bottom. You have to begin to ask yourself why. Therefore, what I'm proposing, I want to explain to you now about Mentacide and how I'm going to try to prove here to you tonight, really for some of you the first time, how this first developed. Approximately, exactly 55 years ago. 55 years ago, a white professor of psychology at the University of Chicago proclaimed to the world this prophecy. Here's what he said, and I'm quoting him. Give me a dozen healthy infants, listen carefully. Give me a dozen healthy infants, well-formed, and here's what's important, and my own specified world to bring them up in, and I'll guarantee to take anyone at random and train him to become any type of specialist I might select. Doctor, lawyer, artist, merchant, chief, and yes, even a beggar man and a thief. Regardless of his talents, his penchants, his tendencies, his abilities, his vocations, and the race of his ancestors. In the quote. The man who made that statement was John B. Watson, a graduate of the University of Chicago and later a professor of psychology at the University of Chicago, and who started behaviorism. Most of you know about B.F. Skinner. John Watson started behaviorism at the University of Chicago, and that's what he said. Give me on my own world, my own specified world, and I will bring up a person anywhere where I would turn him into anything I want him to be. I'll give you some aside about Watson. What happened to Watson was that they came in and caught Watson on top of the desk in a compromising position with a female student, and usual things that goes on in universities, and tried to reprimand him, and he resigned and started J. Walter Thompson's advertising, which, as you know, became the world's largest advertising firm. Now, this properly called behavior modification is a highly complex science, which is underrated and generally ignored by black behavior scientists. Yet any black with a cursory knowledge of B.F. Skinner's experimental analysis of behavior, what it is, should recognize its potential danger to our community, where every institution is under the control of whites. That's what makes it so dangerous. The whites have their specified world. All of our life-sustaining institutions are under control of whites. And so therefore Skinner, who I consider one of the most dangerous white men alive, Skinner came up with these 8 words. Behavior is shaped and maintained by its consequences. Those are devastating words. Skinner talks here. That behavior is shaped and maintained by what happens, by its consequences. Skinner single-handedly